the Dallas Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're now tied 1-1 in this best of seven series. We saw game one, Dallas, pull out, you know, that victory against OKC, that kind of experience was showing a little bit in that game. OKC was able to bounce back in game two. Chaz, what are you seeing so far in this series that makes you believe? I believe we both had Dallas advancing. That Dallas will be able to beat this young and inexperienced OKC Thunder team. Because we've seen in situations where a young team just don't know any better and go on to win a championship. I.e., Golden State Warriors, who they didn't know how to win. In their first time getting to the dance, they actually won. And we see where that turned out to be a dynasty, the modern dynasty in the NBA. Um, we both had Dallas winning, but what are you seeing in this series that will potentially give you cause to pause and say OKC could win this series?
I actually had OKC winning this series in 7.
Did you?
Yeah. Yeah, I
I
watched
had
back.
Dallas.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think
I
you
had
said
Dallas.
Dallas in, like, 5 or 6 maybe. I actually watched back last episode, and I don't think I said it on the pod. I think we just kinda got mixed up, and I never actually
Oh,
said.
you didn't say you didn't pick it.
Yeah, I think that was the only one that I
Oh,
actually
got you.
skipped. But yeah, all season long, telling my friends and different group chats and stuff, I'm like, this OKC team, I know they're young, I know they're inexperienced, but I think they have a real shot to win it. I said that about the Thunder and the Timberwolves probably in December. And honestly, I sometimes I didn't believe it. Certain nights it would kind of worry me like they don't look ready. But I think both teams right now are really playing at a level where they may actually have a chance to get to the finals. In this series, though, with the Mavericks, I could see either team winning it. I mean, I think this is probably one of the most equal matchups that we have left. And we saw the Thunder really took over the second half in game one. And then I thought Dallas was phenomenal last night. OKC didn't really play their best ball, but I thought Dallas was just pretty consistent throughout. Even though Luka is dealing with a leg injury, he also smacked his face on the floor. Like he's kind of going through it, and they just kind of battled through that. I think the biggest key in this series, I would say, is probably Luka's 3-point shooting and probably the Mavericks' overall 3-point shooting in general. I mean, OKC has guys like Lou Dort, Jalen Williams, Cason Wallace. Those are about as good of a group that you can have to stop Luka. I mean, Lou Dort is probably one of the best, maybe 4 or 5 perimeter defenders in the entire league, and he's got the bulk to actually stop Luka from getting to the paint as much as normal. So I think a lot of this series is going to come down to, is Luka's shot falling from outside? In game one, it wasn't. I think he was like 1 of 8. He only had 19 points. I believe that was a playoff low for him so far these playoffs. And then last night he hit several threes. He got going. He had 29. And the Mavericks overall shot like 50% from three. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I think whoever wins that 3-point battle throughout the series is going to win most of these games. And last night we also saw a guy like PJ Washington have 29. I believe that's a playoff career high. When the Mavericks get that type of production from PJ Washington or Tim Hardaway Jr., who at one point had 10 straight points, I believe, last night, if they get it from those guys, then they're a really tough team to beat. So I think the Mavericks are going to rely on their outside shooting, and they're going to need those role players to really step up to have a chance in this series. But I had OKC in 7 coming in, and I could see this series going either way. Obviously, it's 1-1 back going back to Dallas. What are your thoughts on this series?
For correction on my end, OKC actually won. They won game one, and Dallas came back and won game two. Just to correct, I don't want people out there to be like, "Hey, he didn't." Yeah, so so
Clear
I
thing.
do watch the games, guys, but also there's a lot going on too as well. Um, and so, but I think for me, it's going. I agree with your points, mostly all of them. It's going to come down to the perimeter shooting for Dallas. Specifically, it's going to come down to Luka being able to make his jump shots, his threes, the way that we're accustomed to seeing him make, or at least he made them against the Los Angeles Clippers. But then again, I question it because everybody shoots like that against the Clippers. Anyways, um, but I do think that this series is going to be more intriguing and harder than I anticipated it being for Dallas. Because I was under the impression that OKC uh, would not be able to live up to that regular season hype that they had, and not be able to live up to that number one seed that they were able to accomplish in the Western Conference. They're proving me wrong on that aspect of being able to handle the pressure. Um, we saw it happen in round one, but also, getting your feet wet in round one is completely different than going into round two and you're unexperienced. So I think for me is that I agree with you that this is one of the most. This is the probably the even this series is probably the most evenest, which is not a word, but it's even um uh, for the most part more than any series that we have in the playoffs right now. We thought that Denver was going to be, obviously we're going to get into that next. We thought Denver was going to be a more interesting series, which it still could. Um, but I think from the standpoint of OKC is that they have a legit chance to go to the Western Conference Finals. And no, I don't care what anyone said. I don't care what anyone says. If you were to tell me in 2023 that they will have a league MVP candidate, the number one seed in the Western Conference, and also have a chance to go to the NBA Finals potentially, and it was going to happen to one of the youngest teams in the NBA, I don't think anybody would have had that on their bingo card. All four of them. Now you could have said this team could have, made some noise. They could have hype. Maybe they had opportunity to get to the NBA Finals, but no one predicted that they will have a league MVP candidate, the number one seed in the Western Conference, and they have opportunity to go to the NBA Finals, and they're one of the youngest teams in the league. No one saw this coming. It's almost equivalent. Again, I bring up Golden State because Golden State, they were at this age, they were in this stage, they were young, inexperienced, they were going into their own, they didn't know how to win yet. But sometimes you get teams that they don't they don't understand that they're not supposed to win. These young teams, they don't understand that you're not supposed to be this good this fast. And when you have teams that they don't care about that, it's really the teams that built something special. And you could tell they have a special bond with one another. You can tell they love playing with each other. And so they keep that going. Who knows how far that this team can go? And not even just looking for now. I'm talking about in the future. This could be a future championship caliber, team for the next 5 years. And so we don't know what the future holds, but the future is definitely now.
Oh yeah, I think I'm as high as anyone on OKC. And coming into
Mhm.
the year, I said SGA, I think for a second straight year is a legit MVP contender. But
Mhm.
coming from a team that was in the play-in, I said I think they're going to be a top 5 seed. I didn't see them being the number 1 seed in the West
Yeah,
and having a legit shot to come out of the Western Conference. But here we are,
absolutely.
early May, and they do have that actual chance. I will say, like you said, some teams just win ahead of schedule, and we might not
Yeah,
really see it coming. We kind of have that chance with the Thunder and the Timberwolves.
yeah.
You did pick the Mavericks before the series started. Are you still feeling that way, or do you think OKC is going to end up winning it?
I still got the Mavs, and I'm going to tell you why. I still have the Mavericks winning the series because I believe the shooting funk that Luka's in won't last very long. And when you have a talent like Kyrie, and you compare that with a superstar, Luka is that guy on that team. When you have those two, that dynamic, and they're able to score points in bunches. Both of them can go for 30, 40 points. I believe at some point in time, it will get to a point where one of them or both of them will have that game that shifts the series. I don't know if it's going to be Luka doing it, scoring 40 points. I don't know if it's going to be Kyrie doing it, scoring 35 points. But I do believe at some point in time, the dynamics of the series will shift. Because if it don't, the OKC Thunder will win this series. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in game three when they go to Dallas to see how Dallas is able to take the momentum from game two and apply it to game three to see if Luka could get out of his shooting slump. We know role players they play better at home, then versus on the road. We're going to see if Luka can break out of that slump at home and see if that could translate to them winning game three. I will say though, game four to me is pivotal. And we all know the statistics of saying who wins game four when and we know the statistics. Game four to me is very pivotal because if this series goes back to OKC tied 2-2, I have a strong feeling that OKC will win this series.
Mm.
If Dallas can somehow jump the momentum and win two games on their home floor, I think there's an opportunity for Dallas to I think there's an opportunity that Dallas needs to win in five or they lose the series. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think Dallas needs to make quick work of this team or they're going to lose this series. I think the longer it goes on, the more it favors OKC.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times that is the case when the higher seed has those, final two of the three at home.
Yep.
That road team, the lower seed, is kind of put in a predicament. You kind of
Yep.
got to win game three and game four to really feel good about it. I do think this series is 2-2 going back to OKC. But with that said, I'm not going to write the Mavericks off. I mean, I don't think
No.
any of us would be surprised if Luka and Kyrie take over and win game five on the road, and then all of a sudden they're in position to win the series going back home. I
Mhm.
think Kyrie, like you said, he has that ability to go for 35, 40 any given night, but the Thunder have done a great job of locking him down. I mean, game one, I think he had 20, which is, a solid game, but not really up to his standards. And then last night, I think he only had 9. So, SGA has done a great job. Cason Wallace, when he's not guarding Luka, he's guarding Kyrie, which is insane for a rookie to be guarding, two of the best scorers in the entire league, but he's done a
Right.
great job. So I think Kyrie is going to have to get off in one of these next two games to have the Mavericks feel comfortable. But I think OKC's defense is going to put them in position where they have a great chance as well. I think if the style is similar to last night, where it's a little more fast paced and up tempo, I think that favors the Mavericks. OKC, they hadn't allowed more than 100 points in the playoffs until last night. So I think when the game is played, between 90 and 105 points or right around there, I think that favors OKC. The game is a little bit slower. I think SGA is able to operate, in the half court, and then on the other end, they're able to get stops. When they're moving up and down, Dallas is getting a lot of threes off. I think that favors them, and they can score, 115, 120 points or so. I think they have a much better chance. Like you said, going home, that's usually the case. Role players play better. PJ Washington and Tim Hardaway played great in game two. Can they continue that in game three? Or are the Mavericks
Mhm.
able to get that production from elsewhere? I think those are the questions that we're gonna, be asking over the next 48 hours or so. But like I said, I think this series is gonna go 7, and I think either team could win it.
Absolutely. Well, we will keep you guys updated on that series as it continues. Coming up next, we're going to get into, to me, honestly, the shocker, of the NBA playoffs so far. That's the Minnesota up 2-0 on the defending champions. Come up next.